All right, I'm going to unmute you.
Hi.
Hey, my friend, you on the move?
I was looking for, yeah. Oh, it's in the other room. Um, Always on the move, like a rat in a maze.
You're awesome like that. I was just starting to tell the story how you and I first met, that we were both participating in that. I don't was is it Off the Strength? Is that the brand of their podcast? The group of
Yeah,
guys, Tony and Corey and Kyle and Troy. And I may be forgetting one of them, but they've got that Off the Strength podcast, which is awesome. And then they produce these events, and so they produced a live event at the Samsung building down in the meatpacking district, and you and I both were guests on two different panels. Oh, we lost you for a second.
oh,
Um,
I'm just putting in my
Switching hands.
noise cancellation.
Okay,
Okay.
fair enough. Um, but yeah, and I only saw part of your panel. My panel was kind of random about wellness, and I shared some of the stuff that I obviously share all the time. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't. What were you talking about? What was your share at that panel?
Um, Probably.
Do you remember? A while
That's a
ago. It
great
was a while
question.
ago. You're like, no, I was present. And I don't remember at all.
Uh,
Don't mean to put you on the spot.
I just did another one with them like last week. I
Yeah.
can speak more onto that one, but the one that I just did, the one that we did, I think I was just representing like yoga and meditation
Hmm.
and oh, maybe it was because of my working with the Pistons, like working with athletes.
Okay.
Um, that could have been it.
Well, whatever the case was, that's where we met. And we were like in the green room before we went
We
on,
were
and we got to chat a little bit, and we were so clearly each other's people. And
we were
I've
talking
had,
about Louise Hay.
yes, we were talking about Louise Hay. We went all over the place in that first meeting. And then I worked out with you. I went to your apartment and we worked on yoga, and you did an
Hmm.
awesome series of, I don't want to say adjustments, but you worked with me on poses, and you used blocks, and you got my spine in alignment, I feel like, in a way that it never had. And we worked on this underactive kind of shoulder situation I've got, where my shoulders don't naturally kind of stay engaged and roll backwards and open, like when you're doing downward dog, to rotate your
Right.
shoulders back and keep your shoulders rotated back. So you're really good at noticing imbalances and correcting and rehabbing things. And that now
Yeah.
share your story, because your story is super inspirational, how you ended up being the expert that you are in all of the things that you are. Can you kind of recount that story for me? Us.
Of course.
Thank you.
Oh,
Uh-oh.
hello.
I hate when that happens.
Oh, um, so what started out, I guess, I mean, the, the, the broad picture was growing up. I was very awkward, very uncoordinated. Um, Won the class klutz award, graduating high school. Um, and I likened it to being like a puppy with really big paws. So now at 42, I'm 6'8". I've been this height for half my life, but prior to that, I was being groomed for that.
Mm.
So my proprioception was completely dysfunctional. My level of awareness was not even registering. So if I raised my hand now, I kind of know that I'm not going to touch the ceiling. I have my awareness to that. But as a kid, like, and if I did that, like someone would get hit, somebody, someone was going to get hurt. And I heard a lot of people,
Aw.
um, myself included, breaking
Yeah.
bones and scars and things, but just not deliberately, just like
Yeah.
flailing around like a puppy. And so what started out as a kid, like, feeling like a klutz, kind of turned into organizing that and becoming an elite athlete, and taking that, you know, like God-given gift where every coach always told my parents, well, one thing your kid has is they can't teach height. So he's got this height. Now it's a matter of what do you want to do with it? And it wasn't to be a you know, a fantastic lawyer or a doctor. So I did everything I could in my powers to make myself, you know, the best athlete, the best all around human being I could be. But I kind of identified with being an athlete, and making that even more narrow would be a basketball player. So everything was my identity of being a basketball player. And from high school to college, it was a very, you know, arduous journey, just from in high school, not getting a lot of opportunity to play, and then moving to college and just wanting to go to a big D1 school and not having a scholarship at that time, but just happy with a walk-on role and being, you know, a part of a team. So I started at Arizona State, and prior to the prior to the I was gonna say auditions, but they're actually tryouts. That's a different part of my life. When
yeah.
acting and modeling, you know, was another. But prior to an audition, it was called a tryout. And I was playing with the team, and I went up for an alley-oop. If you're not familiar with an alley-oop, then I'll explain to you that. Are you familiar with an alley-oop?
Yeah, they toss
Okay.
and you're there and they're
Right.
yeah.
So I'm in midair.
I
I'm
was a
catching
basketball
this
player for a
ball.
little while.
Right. I'm not sure who the audience is right now. They
It's
don't, but
mainly you and me. It's cool.
right. We'll totally.
This gets
So
edited later for brevity too.
I was in midair. I caught the ball. I was ready for the dunk. Caught the ball. That's the first thing you got to
That's
do.
good. That was a good sign.
Made contact with the ball in the rim. That's everything I needed to do. But the person trying to prevent that from happening took my legs out from underneath me, where I held onto the rim to try to, you know, keep my balance, and I wasn't able to. So as he undercuts me, I flip up land on my head, and my head exploded. There was blood everywhere. Apparently, I was passed out, so I didn't know. I woke up in an ambulance, with, you know, on a seaboard, and being told, "Don't move, don't try to move. You know, you can have spinal injury. You know, all sorts of things." And that was my path. That was the first moment where I knew that, wow, something significant just happened, where I felt invincible as a 17, 18-year-old kid who was indestructible, big guy, very strong, very confident, that it can all be taken away from you instantaneously. So that whole season was a wrap. That whole year of college was a wrap, pretty much. And that next year, as it took a whole year to kind of organize myself and figure out what was the next move, didn't stick around at Arizona State. I ended up going to a junior college down the road and played basketball, because that was what I continuously wanted to do. But I felt I may have an opportunity to play on my own terms and choose the college I wanted to, and receive a basketball scholarship was the ultimate dream of mine as a kid. Beyond that, I would say professionally basketball, but to have a scholarship. So I went on this journey and this path of going to different junior colleges and trying to find a home, which took me on to 6 different schools until
Wow.
I did find that home. Um, and then more injuries, right? So that was, I felt like the worst thing that could have happened, but it wasn't.
Right.
So it was in 1999 2000 season. I was at Grand Canyon University, which was down the road in Phoenix, Arizona, and we were in a drill where we were taking our pad, like a kickboxing pad, and we were tapping each other lightly to simulate defense.
Mm-hmm.
And I happened to have, my teammate was also an ex-convict, who wasn't a very uh, ethical human being, let's just put it that way. He felt it was his opportunity to take any chance of me in playing time out of the equation. He hit me as hard as he could. I had teammates tell me this as well. They just saw it kind of in a slow motion. I'm in midair once again. So the common denominator is me in midair, which
Yeah.
is now my expertise of understanding center of mass and really being able to
Mm-hmm.
keep your head on a swivel and use all 3 planes of motion. But
Mm-hmm.
he hit me as hard as he could from behind. So it was blindsided, just like before.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in midair, I'm up, I get cut up from underneath me. I don't see it coming. This time I don't see it coming, and he hit me as hard as he could, and the impact blew my back out into hyperextension, where immediately I landed. Once I landed, I was on the ground crawling, and I was just in so much pain and
Mm-hmm.
just felt so much fear of like, holy shit, like this is it, I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
I knew it immediately, because my body wasn't, I never really practiced mobility like it's so popular now in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And flexibility wasn't something that was a high priority with
Mm-hmm.
my strength and conditioning coach. It was more
Right.
about just get strong, get big,
Yeah.
right? So that took me on a path of learning to rehabilitate the diagnosis of herniated discs, spinal stenosis. I had sciatica down both of my legs, all of these really excruciating, painful experiences that I hear now more than ever. You know, my doctor's like, you have the body of an 80-year-old man. And I was in my early 20s,
Mm-hmm.
very early 20s, as a matter of fact. And I understood now in my 40s what he was really talking about, because as I see people on a day-to-day basis in my practice, it would make sense. You don't need to have like a blunt trauma to really, because what happens from something that's chronic, from that acute to chronic, chronic to acute transition
Mm-hmm.
of, oh, that's bothering me, but I'm not gonna, I got to continue to work. And so what starts to
Mm-hmm.
really just start become this chronic condition becomes
Yeah.
acute to the point where you're just done,
Yeah.
and you wave the white flag. I need drugs, I need surgery, I need all of these things that Western medicine has been designed to accommodate. And that's something I never went down that path of any surgery. I did experiment with painkillers and muscle relaxers,
Mm-hmm.
which was horrible.
Mm-hmm.
But so now where I'm at, you know, flashing forward, is I've been through this practice. I was able to rehabilitate myself. No more pain, a lot more awareness, a lot more coordination, uh, a lot more confidence in sharing that information, articulating it in a way that, you know, someone who's not a professional athlete can appreciate just as much as someone who gets paid a significant amount of money for a living to use their body and sacrifice their body in order to, make a living.
Yeah. So through your rehab, at what point did you discover yoga?
At the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah. So right at the beginning, I was fortunate that I had a lady by the name of Terry Roach, who was based in Scottsdale, and her clinic was called Body Stabilization.
Mm.
So there was Pilates, and there was massage, and there was yoga, and there was acupuncture, acupressure, um, uh, what else? Like gyrotonics type of, everything that had to do with the body and the way that,
Moves and,
it's
yeah.
designed to move, the
Mm-hmm.
mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
I had to learn how to get in and out of a car again. I had to learn how to sleep properly. Like
Mm.
all the things that are really relevant more than ever with, sleep issue disorders, and like, laying on your side versus sleeping on your stomach, and how that affects the ability to breathe, and
Mm-hmm.
and understanding the pelvic floor and the diaphragm and the way that they, create this cylinder of energy.
Mm-hmm.
So she taught me all of that, and that was a long time ago, and I was very young, and I didn't really understand it in a way that I wanted to do this for a living. I just wanted to play ball again. So that was the first goal. I was like, so I rehabilitated and got back on the team, and it just never was the same. Like my energy and power wasn't there like it was before the injury,
Mm-hmm.
and always felt that unfortunately that was something that what drives me in my practice today is that even if you don't have an injury, it's important to be preventative in such a way that you're prepared, so
Yeah.
that your body and the tissue is resilient to all of those
Yeah.
extreme rotations and things that just wasn't a part of my programming in college,
Yeah.
which is unfortunate.
Yeah. I think there's so much opportunity for this next generation, right? Like your generation of athletes, because of these injuries, you've been a pioneer. You, out of necessity, had to figure a lot of stuff out. And now, this future generation of athletes, I feel like there is a lot more emphasis on mobility, flexibility, a lot more of the Eastern plus Western modalities, because we know that they will give us more protection, better performance, higher levels of, I guess, functionality. You just mentioned, though, that the cylinder, the pelvic floor, and the diaphragm. Can we talk about that for a second?
Of course.
Because I had babies, without drugs, but naturally. And even before I had kids, I got my breath backwards at a very, very young age, right? So
We
when I
talked
breathe,
about that, I remember.
yeah. And so that the reversal, where when we breathe in, our belly should come out when we breathe in, because our diaphragm's
Correct.
dropping, so our belly should be coming out. But many, many, many people, somewhere along the lines when we're young, that gets reversed. And when we breathe in, we inhale, we suck our belly in at the same time, which is
Mm-hmm.
the dysfunctional reverse polarity. Let's talk about, because I've been stuck on this and I'm like, I don't know, like what is the functional, like when does the pelvic floor relax? When does the pelvic floor contract? Like in the natural breath. So the
Mm-hmm.
diaphragm's coming down. Is the pelvic floor relaxing at that point? Or is the pelvic, do you tell me? Because I want to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, I wish it was more of a visual of what I see it as, like a trampoline.
Mm-hmm.
So it comes down, and it's always got a tautness to it. It's
Mm-hmm.
never going to be super slack. And that's maybe where childbearing creates that loose pelvic floor.
It's like
So that's an interesting
post-traumatic stress. Like, this is like really traumatizing. And
right.
yeah,
My notifications are
bothering you.
popping up on my phone. So
Mm.
if you see my finger, but here's
Uh-oh.
the thing.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Okay, so pelvic floor, never loose. We're going right to the core issue. Okay, go ahead.
I think that there's kind of tautness, which I could be completely off, and I'd love someone else's opinion. But see, fascia loves end range.
Mm.
So when you're able to find end range, and not over end range, but what end range is like knowing your limits, knowing your boundaries, appreciating that. Hypermobility, people who are hypermobile don't know end range.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're very much lost in space.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, oh, I'm super flexible, and that's great, but that can lead to
Mm-hmm.
injuries down the road that were preventable, right?
Mm-hmm.
So with the pelvic floor, what you're strengthening is the idea that you want to create that resiliency and bounce,
Mm-hmm.
that the diaphragm, it's dropping down, expanding out, but there's a ricochet effect that it just
Yes.
pulls back up, and there's a cylindric, is that
Yeah.
the proper word?
Yeah.
You look at it like when you look at a child, your baby, when they were born,
Mm-hmm.
and you just see the belly just rock. All we see is that belly expanding,
Yeah.
which is using your diaphragm, because up here is a lot more anxiety-induced breathing. It's like
Mm-hmm.
when you're hyperventilating, and it's nice that you're up in the upper lobe of the lung, but if you're not able to get the full capacity and you're not tapping into the diaphragm, you're only here. Well, that's very like
Constricted
it's
and
very
yeah.
anxious, right?
Yeah.
So the diaphragm and the pelvic floor, they work symbiotically, where it's like it goes down, it bounces, and it goes back up, and there's that's that expansion out, right?
Yeah.
But if the floor isn't strong enough, if the foundation isn't strong enough, then the breath isn't deep enough.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have that ability to ricochet off, and it kind of just is more dense, and
Mm-hmm.
it falls flat. And so it doesn't, you're not getting a three-dimensional breath. You're not getting that expansion like gills on a fish, coming
Right.
from this capacity and then through this capacity, whereas as much as it's expanding out this way, you got to think about behind you that it's expanding in the same fashion, and that certainly that sagittal plane, they're both going like this, and then in the frontal plane they're expanding like that, and then your cross patterns right here, so you're getting this like the
Yes.
tensegrity of it all. It's like
Yeah.
that.
Liberty
That's how
Science Center used to have a thing that would like get small and get big and get small and get big.
Right.
Well, let's just talk rather than focus on the pelvic floor. I mean, in general, when there's an injury, right? So like, I think childbirth is kind of like going through something really traumatizing. And so,
Yeah.
I would understand because it's ridiculously painful, clearly. But in any injury, so anytime there's an injury, trauma, and then there's maybe a disconnection after an injury where the muscles and the brain are no longer kind of functional and connecting and saying that it's safe to be used. You get injured and the brain holds on to the trauma that it's, because I've found for me and a lot of my clients, like there's a rehabilitation process where the muscles are actually fine. It's the connection neuromuscularly where the brain is still remembering that something isn't fine and still behaving as if there's an injury when really there's not.
Right.
Does that make sense? Is that your?
Well, yeah, I think you're convincing here's my take on that. You're convincing the brain to be like, oh no, we're fine. Where at the end of the day, the brain's the one that's making the final call.
Right.
So it knows best, and the brain, the body connection, those two need to be communicating with each other at a level of trust where, you know, like I remember, wow.
The dog.
I remember going into a forward fold and having it was a painting just, a painting just fell. Is it fine? Was there water? Okay. So if you're in a forward fold and they're experiencing sensation, like it was sciatica for me, and I'm in this forward fold, I'm like, this is excruciating. There was this moment where I had to go, it's temporary. I've been through worse. So I went deeper into it, not with like anger, because you can't. I went in with like a curious love of what's really going on. And what happened to me, I don't know if other people can speak on that, but it was gone. And so I hit a threshold and I went through it, and I didn't force it in a way that like if something's not working and you get frustrated and you just
sounds
start
like disrespectful. Like you were respectful of your body.
Had to, exactly.
Kind of like being a parent, like when your kids don't want to do something, like, I understand this is painful and we're doing it anyway with love.
Right.
And I'll hold your hand through it and we're doing it.
Right. I don't have children, but I can remember being a child and knowing that I was the child and there was an adult, and if the adult said something, even if but because I'm the adult and you're the child, and that's the way things are at this moment, you'll learn and understand why. But sure, definitely I took on a responsibility of going through that experience. And what I found out later, what I learned was that it's because of this connection that I was able to break through into what no longer existed, that sciatica, that excruciating, you know, nerve fire that was just never stopped. And then so I was like exploring it, and that's what I found to be now. It would be called nerve flossing. And going into, and then like playing around with, you know, the extension or the flexion of my knee further into the stretch, and that, so it's like it was almost like a Rubik's cube kind of play on figuring out what is going to eliminate this pain, because I'm just not into it anymore. If I ever was into it. But I felt that it was the brain, most importantly, that was making the final call. It wasn't that my body was like, no, we're doing this, and I don't care what you think, brain. But that's where with the yoga, and this is before I even like got into any teacher training or studied any of the deeper, you know, philosophy of yoga, but that there is that mind body spirit that exists. And what I found, if we go back to the diaphragm, was that the spirit is your breath. And that spirit mediates the mind and the body, because they're like an old married couple, and they know each other backwards and forwards. But you know, the breath is the spirit, and that's your inner child, that's the kid. You know, you got to listen to them, because they're the future. Because at the end of the day, the breath is going to exist, it's going to pass on. You know, and the body's going to decay, and the mind can stay as sharp as it wants. So we'll definitely use the maternal is the mind and the paternal is the body. But the breath has absolutely the final say.
Mm.
It lets you know how far you can actually, take that that path, how long you're gonna go, how long you're gonna be able to go on that journey,
Mm. Yeah,
right?
totally. So talk to me about the company that you launched and your philosophy and the work that you're doing. Do you pronounce it Sproga? Is that how you?
Sproga,
Sproga.
Sproga.
Sproga. Sproga.
So when I moved to New York a little over 2 years ago, I moved from Detroit, and when in Detroit, I created a class. It's so funny because you see online on your social media like what you did 4 years ago and like where what was going on, what these memories were. So originally it was Hardcore 45, and it was a play on core, like your core, uh,
Strength.
not hardcore like gangster, yeah, hardcore abdominals, and it was 45 minutes, and it was like um, a low impact training before low impact training is really kind of hit an audience, because I've always been about recovery and repair, Pam, will be very honest.
Mm.
Like, I put myself through the ringer as an elite athlete, training and putting myself through what a lot of people now really want to, and I'm like, it's not all it's cracked up to be.
Yeah.
Like your value on the recovery side of things, and like good sleep and like eating good and like your nutrition and those things, that's what's going to see your gains. It's not like you lifting more, because if you're lifting poorly, if your mechanics aren't there, then you're going to be
Sure.
constantly just dealing with your shit.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it started as Hardcore 45, and then it had yoga, it had foam rolling, it had meditation, it had
Mm.
Bosu balls, it had physio balls, like everything that I love and enjoy. And it was only 45 minutes. And I felt like that was like the perfect amount of time to get, everything you needed to get in, moving in all three planes of motion, moving in two different directions. And then saw what ended up being Sproga. How that happened was I was having a shot of espresso, and as I was ordering it, on the board it was called Spro, and I never saw that before. So
Mm.
I was really like, oh, Spro, cool, and immediately just thought of Sproga as everything. My nickname is Yoga Dan, and everything is yoga with me, and so I just thought Sproga.
Mm-hmm.
So that how it evolved now. Flash forward here 2 years later, it's Sproga. I've stuck with the name because I just kind of, there's a stickiness and I love it. It has a different pivot now where I've been focusing on ergonomics and office wellness and mechanics, and I partner with WeWork and a couple other companies, building out a program that instead of them coming down to me, rolling out a yoga mat and taking 50 minutes out of their day, I would go up to their office and I would teach them how to sit. So the mechanics of sitting properly, the mechanics of standing and moving in all three planes of motion, and a few exercises that went along with that. And then, that vibration element with massage gun that, just felt great,
Mm.
and just got really, really, positive feedback, and people were really seeing improvements. And as I started to like recognize what this was, I saw an opportunity to build some programs out and also build some products out that, instead of like, this is what you need to do and this is where you can get it, I started to go, well, this is something I think I can create, as an alternative with my design and my style and flavor.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where, you know, we are now, where I've created the setup, which is what I was doing for offices with
Mm-hmm.
individuals in the offices. Now it's right to your home, right at the front door, and it has everything that you need in order to stay sane and kind of win this, you know, work from home crisis. Which, you know, it has a proper laptop stand, because most people are working with laptop computers, and, you know, there's no way to work on a laptop that's biomechanically and ergonomically sound. There's no way. So you need an external keyboard and an external mouse in order to really win that battle. I don't at the moment have that as an offering to sell the external mouse and keyboard,
Mm-hmm.
but I suggest that everybody who is working from home, that they invest in that immediately.
Mm.
And then there's a whole, you know, exercise program around the yoga block and the yoga straps and a lumbar support. There's a half foam roller in there as well. There's a mini massage ball by Hyperice that is included in the kit as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I just launched the website, so it's Sproga.com, and I'm,
Awesome.
you know, very excited about it, as I see this as a great way to just, you know, offer an extension of my services as a way that's curated package of all of these tools, which if you don't have a yoga block in your home, you know, you should, right? And if you don't have a half foam roller, you should definitely have a yoga strap, and you should have a lumbar support for your chair. And so I would be doing these assessments. I'm like, do you have all this stuff? And they're like, no. I was like, all right, well, it's time for me to put something together.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, all this is, you know, definitely needed, and you have such, you know, unique experience and point of view. You know, as someone who's on the smaller side, I mean, I'm 5'5", so it's not like I'm totally average height for a woman. So it's not like I'm
Sure.
short, but I'm very petite. So, you know, I definitely can't directly relate to what it must have been like. But like my dad is on the call. That's my dad. I mean, he's 6 feet. He's not 6'8". But I was thinking about, you know,
Your
just like,
dad's your dad's
yeah,
on
my dad
this?
is, yeah, my dad is
Oh,
here.
okay.
You say hi.
Oh.
And if he has any questions, we'll let him. Because we always, I mean, we both have really, you and I, Dan, talked about the forward neck thing. And I definitely got that from my dad. So neck pain and range of motion in the neck is something that my dad
Oh, I
really,
see him now. I swiped over. There he
yeah,
is.
he's here.
The backdrop.
Yeah, this backdrop in Florida. So Dad, if you have any questions, I can unmute you. If
Cool.
you have any questions about exercises or practical stuff.
Well, you know what did occur to me earlier. I don't know if it's go for these freebies every time, right? Thank you, Dan. So for a beginner, Pam's introduced me to a lot of really helpful breath work.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to visualize what you guys are talking about, I think you call it the pelvic floor, and that thing that you were demonstrating, and the in
Diaphragm.
Yeah, is there one breathing exercise sort of like analogous to, you know, Pam's got me do the walkouts every morning. That's my one big exercise. Is there a way to communicate, articulate, or demonstrate for a beginner a breathing exercise that would help?
Yeah, you know, it being May 4th, I think it's more appropriate than ever. May the 4th be with you. You know, the Yoda, you know, in me saying, but so Ujjayi pranayama, you sound like Darth Vader, and right. So go like that, like you're fogging up a mirror. and you want to duplicate that same activity in your muscles in your throat with your mouth closed, so that you're breathing in and out through your nose. And as you inhale through your nose, your belly is expanding like the balloon, inflating with air. And it's and then as you exhale through the nose, and it's the same. That's the respirator, thing that we're dealing with. And what you're doing is you're able to filter out so much of the pollution by solely focusing on breathing in and out through the nose. But most importantly is that you activate the diaphragm, thinking about that as you inhale, it's pushing down, which is expanding out. And then as you exhale, it contracts back in. And then the ribs expand out east and west in the same way, but just by that sound. So Ujjayi is the oceanic sound that it's representing, and it helps to filter out the incessant noise that we deal with as human beings. So in yoga, it's a vital practice in pranayama to focus in on the sound of your own breath rather than the internal dialogue that can interfere with, being able to kind of move through some of those obstacles.
Great.
Yeah.
I think I got it. And I think I can definitely, move my breathing along a little bit, incorporating what you just shared. So thank you.
You're welcome.
I remember when I first learned Ujjayi when I went to yoga school, and I really I had done zero pranayama before I went to yoga school. And I remember how hard it was. I just remember I'm like doing Ujjayi while practicing yoga. It's like while doing asana, right? While doing asana.
Right.
It was like, I was just like, yeah, no. I was like, it is so beyond my capacity. And it was 2013 when it's just 7 years ago. And it's really nice because one of the things that I'm very aware of how much of a better breather I am now, and how I can do things that I remember the first time I would try. I thought, this is like objectively impossible. I have that part of my personality. I don't know if this resonates with you or anyone, where when something is hard, I'm like, no one could do this. Like I remember the first time I got a Wii Fit. It was like a push-up and then open a side plank. It was like a full, not like even on your knees. I think at the time I was trying to do it on my knees, and I couldn't even do that. I couldn't even do like a knee push-up and then open to a side plank. And I remember being like, there's no way someone can do this. Like, show me. I want to meet the person who can do this, right? And
right.
Of course it's ridiculous because now, it's one of those things I'd laugh about. So I remember being so convinced that it was not possible to do a full push-up into a side plank. And now, of course, I can just, do many, many, many. And then Ujjayi was one of those. And the first time Ujjayi, it was like I couldn't breathe. Like I literally was like, I couldn't do it, much less do it while doing asana, going through poses. Like there was no way. And now I can.
I think children are the greatest example to witness how effortless, as adults we all are now. Like we breathe from here because this is where our mortgage is. This is where all of our responsibilities are. And when we're children, we don't have any of those responsibilities. So
right.
we're very instinctual and primal, and that's how we weren't taught to breathe diaphragmatically. It's the way that we were wired when we left the womb,
right,
is to breathe diaphragmatically. And only when we get worked up do we go up through here, and it's like that is a way to regulate, creating both of those to work together in harmony, versus like, you don't only want to breathe, just your belly expanding and contracting, because there's all of that in your upper lobes of your lungs which in part of my practice, you know, your hand placement helps to affect the shoulder. So if you want to get a higher capacity or volume in your lung, you know, you flip your wrists, and by flipping your wrists, you're able to open up those collarbones and bring that capacity up even more. So it feels good to take that breath all the way up there.
Oh, so just flipping your wrists and just holding your wrists out opens up your shoulders.
you want to close the chain. So if you're on the ground in tabletop,
okay,
and you flip your wrist.
Got it.
You could do it like that, but that's also why when we meditate, our palms are more in a supinated state, is because that is opening up the shoulder versus the palm down.
Yeah.
And then that throws that back into its position,
Awesome.
where we're kind of meant to be more plumb with the ear, the shoulder, the elbow, the hip joint, all the way down the chain, and all the way up the chain.
Well, as usual, you are such a wealth of information. I cannot wait till we can have more time together. Although we could probably work together remotely too, huh?
Yeah, I'd love to. You know, why don't we set up a session?
Yeah, I would like, because you have such extensive knowledge in areas that are really, really, really important. Like really, and you know, I know more than most, and I am very aware of how much I don't know. And there's just so much about mobility and the subtle ways that I hold my body as I go through the day that I know are suboptimal. And I know that it's all connected. And so by working on the body, I know at the same time I'm working on the mind and the spirit. Just like I know when I breathe that I'm simultaneously working on the mind and the body. So I definitely would love that. So I think we'll end here, be cognizant of everyone's time. But let's you and I follow up, because I do want to have more sessions with you, because I know I always learn. And there's a lot of stuff. I've grown so much in the last month and a half. We didn't even really talk about the whole quarantine and how your experience of it's been. For me,
we'll catch up.
Yeah, I've definitely grown a lot in the last month and a half, because this has forced us to be uncomfortable. So this has been an opportunity of growth.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so nice to see you, Dad. Love you. Dan, thank you so much for the time. So I'll follow up, and we'll get some more time on the books.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks so much, my friend.
The Juve light connection, if you can make that
so
would
the
be...
Juve, there's Juve or there's red light rising. The Juve is kind of the brand that most people know about. Red light rising is, I think, an equally good product. I can hook you up with them as well if you're open to that. Either one. I've got contacts at both companies.
I'll look into the red light rising, it's called.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I met those guys when I was in London at the Health Optimization Summit. They were there.
But you have Juve in you have the Juve in your...
I have the Juve. I have the Juve at HACKD, and I have a smaller red light rising at home. And I have right now the Juve HACKD is at my home now too. So I've got the big Juve panel at home. Red light rising makes small and big setups as well.
And you don't see a difference?
No.
But there's a price difference, I imagine?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty
You'll let
substantive.
me know.
Yeah, so I it's worth researching.
Okay, I'll do that.
Cool.
I need that. These blue lights are making me go bonkers.
Yes. Yeah, I was just up at the lake house. I've got Himalayan salt lamps all over it. As soon as the sun goes down, it's just Himalayan salt light time. It's great.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
That's nice. Okay.
All right, my friend. I appreciate you to the moon. You are divine.
Yeah. Good catching up, man.
Yeah. So I'll follow up. We'll do stuff offline. Lots of love. I'll talk soon.
Bye.
Thanks so much. Bye. Isn't he sweet?
Yeah, I just unmuted myself again.